for our guest for the evening, Phoebe. She has incredible information that she is going to be sharing with us. A little bit about her. As a soprano, she has been praised for her vibrant voice, honest acting, and engaging stage presence. An enterprising self-directed artist, she has created and performed many solo concerts, which audience members have called magical and riveting, and she's going to share all of those secrets with us tonight. She also holds a Bachelor of Music in Voice Performance from Chapman University, and she's also an accomplished pianist. She is currently based in her hometown of Eugene, Oregon, where she maintains a private teaching studio and offers workshops on conquering stage fright and audition skills. And she's here with us tonight to share a little bit about creating our own opportunities and what to do in between all of our gigs and our roles, and not only giving us opportunities and ways to perform, but also things that we can be passionate about and ways that we can communicate what we really care about to the rest of the world.
Thank you. I love that you talked about creating things that help us communicate with the world. That's really what I want to do with my concerts. I think it's great that I'm making some more money for myself in between roles, but that's really not the point. I want to be artistic and express cool things that I don't get to do when I have a role in an opera. And I'm so excited to share with you guys. There are a lot of different ways to create your own opportunities, but today what I'm really focusing on is putting together a solo concert or recital, where it's basically the you show. And you get to choose the music, set everything up. And, it doesn't really make you a ton of money after you account for all the expenses of setting it up, but it's pretty great to establish your presence and learn some more stuff. I got newspaper coverage this year for the first time, I was in 2 newspapers, and my audition set is going to be so awesome in the fall because I have all the arias ready and I've performed them and it's great. I do still put on little recitals in churches with a donation jar. Those are great. Today I'm going to talk about getting into big venues. If you want to pitch to a concert hall or a theater, you don't have to, but I'm going to recommend that you take notes because my outline here is 6 pages long. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of work and planning that goes into putting on your own solo program and being the diva, but also the producer and the director and coordinating everyone's schedules. It's just a ton of information. Okay, let's get started. Where do you start? The concept for your concert and the venue where you're doing it are very closely linked. If you already have one of them chosen, that will influence the other. You don't want to try to put on an opera concert at a jazz club. That would be weird unless they're doing classical night. So the first time I did a concert, I knew I was at a venue that did the classical musicals. I'm sorry, not classical, the classics, like Golden Age, early musical theater, like Rodgers and Hammerstein and stuff. And so I did a lot of musical theater, and I did put in some opera. I did a back and forth of musical theater and opera because that fit that venue. When I wanted to do Les Nuits d'été by Berlioz, I knew it was a terrible idea to try to do it at that venue. They would never say yes to it. So I did that in a smaller, there's a venue, it's actually called the Old Church. That's its name. It's not just an old church, it's called the Old Church. So yeah, know your venue, know your material. Those things go hand in hand. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about making up your program. You want to put on a solo concert, but you have to pick the songs and have a theme, something sort of cohesive. As I mentioned, the venue matters. So if you know your venue, go for something that's going to work there. Keep in mind as you're creating this program, your own vocal and emotional stamina. Because if you have a role in an opera, you get a break, right? Somebody else has an aria or something. You get to go off stage sometimes. If it's your show, you could be on stage the entire time singing aria after aria. Your voice will murder you. Or your emotions. If you're acting them all out really passionately, you don't want to have an entire concert of Afifus. You'll die. But ways that I've come up with to keep yourself happy, not dying, are you can have duets where the other person gets to sing a lot more than you do. So I did a concert of music that lives in the world between musical theater and opera. And there was Sondheim, and I did Every Day a Little Death from A Little Night Music. My friend Elise sang Charlotte. So I basically sat and looked upset for the whole song, and my voice was resting. I only sang at the very end. That was great. Think of those duets. Also pay attention to the order you're putting the music in, so that like you're not trying to belt something out in Broadway style and then sing Bellini, right? Just put things in an order that makes sense. And always ask, can I get someone else to do this? And do I want to? That same concert with A Little Night Music in it, I did an operetta chunk. I noticed there was nothing from Fledermaus. I thought about learning Klänge der Heimat, and then I realized I already had an amazing mezzo who was an accomplished Orlovsky. I said, hey, do you want to do a solo aria in my concert? And she said yes. So I actually went off stage and relaxed for 3 minutes there. It was awesome. So think about getting other people to take up some of the time for you. So that sort of goes in with after you already have your concepts. Let's talk a little bit about how you come up with the concepts. I personally sort of let ideas hit me and see what blossoms. In order to do that, you need to really just be open everywhere, see what comes up. My first concert was direct comparisons between operas and musicals, where there was a song that told a similar story in an opera and in a musical. It was like almost the same song. Then there was that one that was in between. And what I just did was music based on Shakespeare. So for the first one, here's an example of ideas just hitting you anywhere. I knew right away I wanted to do musical theater and opera right next to each other because people tell you you can't. And I really hate it when someone tells me I can't do something. So I just went and did it. It was sort of a haha, I told you so to the whole world. I put belting right next to opera because I can. And it was very satisfying. Another thing that can help picking a concept is think what is unique about you and your voice that not everyone can offer. Is there a style or composer that you're really good at? Are you really good at weird modern music? Because not everyone is good at that. Is there a language that you speak fluently? Can you focus on that language? I'm from this town, and I was able to like bring in things like, hey, I did this play 10 years ago when I was a teenager, and now I'm going to sing it for you as a mature adult. Isn't that cool? And people really responded. So like, what is different about you? Because anyone can go sing something from Into the Woods, but not everyone can get up there and say, you saw me do this when I was 15, right? And that only works if you're in your hometown. That one's specific to me, but you kind of get the idea. Think about what makes you different. Okay, so you've got a cool concert and you need to book a venue. Maybe you already know where you want. How do you do that? Work your connections. Networking is everything. I was lucky and I already had a connection at the first place I pitched to. I taught there. They had a concert hall and a little music school attached, and I'd been teaching voice lessons there for a couple years, so they knew me, and that really helped. But you can also go see your friends, right? Friends are great connections. I had an extra connection at this same venue because one of my best friends has been doing the musicals there since high school. In high school, he was in the chorus. Now he plays the lead. And I would just go see him and post on social media that I was at that venue seeing a great show. They noticed. They responded. And then you can ask your friends to be involved too when you're pitching. If you know somebody that does stuff there, say, hey, I'm pitching a concert. Would you be interested in being in it? And can I use your name? And then you name drop when you contact the venue and say, hey, I'm friends with Dylan, and he spoke really highly of working with your venue. So I really like as well. And they go, oh, you know Dylan, you must be good, or something like that. So you figured out where you are. You can work your connections. See, you might already have a connection you don't know about. Ask your friends. You might know someone in there. I have connections at most of the theaters in town, and I've only actually worked with 3 of them. And I find every time I'm like, oh, I'm working at this new place. And 3 friends go, oh, I've worked there. Yeah. Why didn't I ask you to introduce me? Right. Just ask your friends. You have more connections than you think you do, I promise. Okay, so then you want to ask for a meeting with the people in charge in order to book your concert. I email to ask for a meeting instead of doing the pitch over email, especially as the first contact, because that can be really overwhelming. Like, hello, let me introduce myself. Here's a whole pitch, go. Right? They like, hello, who are you? Excuse me. So I send an email, say, introducing myself. And I would say, once again, name drop, work your connections, say, I work with these people that have worked there, or I met you when I went to see this production. Remember me? We talked. Name drop your teacher if they're a big name. I know when I mention my teacher's name in this area anyway, people instantly go like, oh, you must be a serious singer. Like, just whatever you can, work the connections. It works really well. And you can mention your idea for your concert, but save it for the pitch. Like, don't give your whole pitch in the email. Save it for the meeting. Tell them enough that they want to meet you in person, or over the phone could work fine too, but I find the communication works a lot better when you can have an active back and forth instead of emails with lots of delay time and chances for them to forget about you and, get lost in the sea of all the other stuff the theater is doing. So yeah, really in that first email, less is more. You might have to try a couple places. I was lucky and it worked at the first place because I had connections there. But don't get discouraged. Try lots of different places. Really go see their stuff so you can know that you're pitching something that's appropriate for them, and say that in your email. Like, I have this concert idea. I think it works for your venue. Maybe a little bit of here's why, but like I said, less is more. Save it for the meeting. Okay, now you have a meeting. Well done. Let's say, oh, that went really well. You have a meeting. It's just a performance. Y'all know how to perform. We're all singers, right? We know how to put on a show. I'm not saying be theatrical or be inauthentic, but just treat it like you're speaking to an audience, because they are an audience. Name drop some more and talk about the stuff that you just mentioned and hinted at in the email. Why is your concept a good match for this venue and not just a vaguely good concert that somebody should do somewhere? What success have you already had as a performer? Why should they take a risk on you, especially with the first one? With my future concerts, I just went to a new venue. I could say, look, I've done these concerts at this other venue and it's been successful. And they said, okay, great, let's do it. But at the first one, they're like, you've never done a solo concert before. Why is this a good idea? So I talked about the solo recitals that I'd done for free, and also operas, and just bring in that, like, this is my body of work. I have had success. I haven't had success at this specific thing yet, but you can count on me to have success at it if you give me a chance. And then what or concert is going to draw an audience? Because lots of venues, they want new people. How can you bring in new people? I know at the first one, because it was mostly musical theater that they did there, and I was doing musical theater and some opera, they were counting on me to bring in more of the classical community than they had seen before. And I did. It was cool. Yeah, what can you bring to give them a new audience, to make them money, right? Why should they take a risk on you, basically? Okay, so all this interpersonal stuff is going really well. Yay, congratulations. You're getting a contract. You have to talk about money. And you have to be your own producer, agent, decision maker. Woohoo. It's a lot. You basically have 3 options with money. One is they'll pay you a flat fee for performing, and then they keep the take from the tickets or concessions, anything else. That is the lowest risk for you, but probably also the least money. And this is what I did for my first one. And it was great because they paid for all the advertising. They did the graphic design. They bought ad space and things, and I didn't have to think about it. And that was good because I wasn't ready to think about it. I was still trying to figure out the whole, how do you sing a whole solo concert and manage other artists and a schedule and put together a storyline with a bunch of disconnected songs. And it was great for the first one to have less responsibility on me. I highly recommend it. The next option is you pay them a fee to rent their space. That's the most risk for you. If you sell out the house at a good price, you get to keep all the money. So that might be worth it. The third option, which I just did, is you split the cost and the take from tickets evenly. So whatever you spend on graphic design, photography, advertising, buying concessions, so many things you can spend money on, you split that. And then all of the ticket sales, that's also split. Just everything's 50-50. This, if you do this, and I do recommend it, it's good, but this requires the most advanced communication and get everything in writing and be ready to very politely stand up for yourself, because well-meaning people make slight math mistakes and everyone assumes automatically that they're right. So if you bring up, oh, I think you actually didn't pay me for this one thing, then they'll be like, of course I did. And so you have to like be assertive, be confident, get in there. So here are some things. I made a lovely little list of things that I didn't think of beforehand so that you can think of them beforehand. If you sell space in the programs and format the programs with the ads, you sell ad space, collect money, do all of that. Are you splitting that too? Or do you get to keep that because you did all the work? Reverse of that, if the theater spends all the money and energy for personnel to buy concessions to sell at intermission, and they do all the work of procuring them and then selling them and collecting money, do they get to keep that money? Or do they have to split that with you? This time we did. The answer was yes to both of those questions. We just split everything. In retrospect, I'm not sure that was actually the most fair or accurate thing to do. And I think I might do that differently next time, but it's worth thinking about. And everything that you can possibly think of, decide in advance and get it written down somewhere, preferably on the contract. But even if you have a written record somewhere else, it'll help if it comes to a dispute. And I like to assume good faith. I think everyone's disputing with good intentions. Nobody's trying to screw you over, but be ready to, as I said, very politely stand up for yourself. And in order to do that well, you need to get comfortable with numbers, with some form of accounting software, or even just Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets. Just be comfortable. And if you aren't, if you know that you will not be confident at math, because that's just not one of your skills, get a really trusted friend who is, so that when you're talking money, if you're negotiating something or disputing something, you can speak from a place of confidence of like, no, I do know these numbers are right, and be very politely assertive with that. Yeah, you have to come from a place of confidence or else it just won't work. If you're going in there, I think maybe this is wrong, then they'll be like, no, it's right. So yes, always building your confidence. You're the producer, you're in charge. Like, take on that mantle. It's a lot of responsibility and stress, but you can also like get really confident and strong from it. So take the good stuff. You're dealing with the stress, you might as well also get the benefits. Okay. So before, side note, I added at the last minute, decide what is non-negotiable for you so that you're not trying to negotiate it. So if they bring up something and you're like, nope, no way, you can just say it. For me, it's, if I am only getting one tech/dress rehearsal, I will not use amplification. I just won't deal with it with microphones, because being an opera singer, you will overload the microphone so fast. And if you're switching styles a lot, they'll be like trying to change things on the microphone, and one rehearsal is just not enough. So I just pick my repertoire assuming that I'm not going to be mic'd. And then if they talk about miking, I say, I don't sing mic'd. And it's just not an issue. I tried to work around it with the very first one, and I'll tell you a story about it later. It was not worth it. If something's non-negotiable and you know it in advance, then you're already there. Okay, last little note on this. Personal money matters. See if you can come up with a vague budget for yourself beforehand so that when surprise expenses come up, because they will, you already have a sense of whether or not you can take them on. If the theater is paying you back for all your expenses at the end, that's great, but like, can you afford to take it out of your account right now? Are you going to go into massive credit card debt to do this? It's cool if they pay you back later, but what about interest? So anyway, just little things you might not think of. There's obviously advertising, but within that, are you buying ad space in a newspaper? Do you need a graphic designer? Do you need a new photograph for the poster? Are you going to sell concessions at intermission? Will the theater buy those? Will you buy those? Do you need to buy any props or set pieces? Are you using them? Do you already have them? And personal stuff, like, do you need to get a gown dry cleaned or altered? Do you want to buy a new one? Do you really need to get your nails done right before the concert in order to feel good? You know, think about it in advance, so you're not like, it's the day before and I have no money and I was planning to go out to lunch today, but I have no money, so I can't. I guess I'm going to sing without eating. Because that's a bad idea. So yeah, plan stuff in advance as much as you can. I'm going to tell you later, you can't plan for everything, but plan for what you can. Okay, moving forward, congratulations, you've booked your concert. Yay! You've got your cool concept and your venue, maybe some friends involved in it. Good for you. You have to rehearse. You have to deal with musicians' schedules. I'm sorry. Give yourself a hug. So put on your patient's hat. Love arts administrators everywhere. Send them love. You will send them even more love after you've done this, I swear. So artists can be scattered, myself included. You have to be patient. Figure out what works best for everyone, and then somebody is going to text you the night before and be like, oh my God, I forgot. I have this rehearsal for this other concert, like 2 hours like overlap with yours. I'm sorry. And you're like, okay, let's figure this out. Just be ready for it. Put the patience on. In order to avoid this issue coming up when it's really important, like dress rehearsal, get dress rehearsal on the calendar as far in advance as you possibly can. I like to get it on the contract with the performance. So I have it in the space and like, we're performing on this date. We have dress rehearsal on this date, and just tell everyone like, you have to be at dress rehearsal. And that way, depending on how intricate it is, having people together, you can maybe get away with not having everyone there at the same time until dress rehearsal. My last concert, I only had people who were on stage at the same time together at rehearsals up until dress rehearsal. I did not have a single rehearsal with everybody there except dress. And there was one scene that had every single person in it, but it was very simple, and I'd worked with all of them before individually, so I trusted them and I knew they were pros. And thank goodness I was right. They were pros, and we got to dress rehearsal. We ran through that one scene before we did the run through of the whole thing. It worked. If you know your people, you can do that. Bonus point for dress rehearsal, have it at least 2 days before the show and hire a photographer. Cool, you're rehearsing. How much are you staging? Think about this in advance. Keep in mind the venue and the acoustics. Are you doing Porgi Amor, right? Can you lie down and have people still hear you? Does your voice disappear if you turn in more than 45 degrees? Plan it in advance so that maybe if you're doing a love song and you really have to cheat out, maybe you have your tenor standing behind you instead of trying to face each other. I was really lucky this time to be able to just stand straight on for part of the song. We were just facing each other, and it worked acoustically, so we could have that difference of like, we're facing out, now we're turning in, and have variety. But you just need to know beforehand. If you can get into the space and test stuff out, do it. It's what I did at this new space. The first thing I did when I got in there for the contract was I lay down on the floor and started singing. They thought I was very strange, but it worked. And then I used that in my concert, and it was one of the most effective moments in the whole show. Okay, if you're staging a show, you're acting as stage director, and you haven't done this before, which a lot of us haven't. I mean, some of us have done stage directing in school or as a teacher, but not everyone has. Do you need help? Think about it in advance. Do you need outside eyes, like a trusted friend or a camera at rehearsal to film yourself? Or do you actually need to hire someone to come in and stage direct you? The first time I did hire someone, and she was a friend, so she did it for cheap. And I'm glad I did. I learned a lot from her. But then I started directing more in other things, and for all of them since then, I've directed it myself, and I love it. But it is a lot of work. So it's a lot of energy. Prepare yourself for that. And personally, I love this, so I'm going to share it with you, but you don't have to do it this way. My agreement with my colleagues when I'm doing a show is if I'm on stage, I can't watch. So you are allowed to make any comment, any suggestion you want, And I promise I will not get offended, as long as you promise me that you won't get offended if I decide not to use your comment or your suggestion. So that's the agreement, is complete honesty on both sides, because it's my show. And if they see something that they would change and I disagree with it, I have the authority to do that, even though I don't see it. So we just talked to each other in advance. Everyone agreed to that. It works really well. I highly recommend it. I ask people to watch when they're not on stage. So like in dress rehearsal, I said, if you're not on, because I was the only one who was on for most of the time. Everyone else was like on for a song, then go sit for a while. If you're not on, please watch and tell me what works. And it's worked really, really well. So I recommend that. Last bit on staging, set pieces. Do you have them? Do you need them? Will you use them? Do you have to buy them? How will you transport them to the theater? Because you can't walk down the street with a couch on your back, usually. I can't. I have this couch. My parents have this couch that I love, and I've used it twice. But like, we have to get a pickup truck from my uncle. It's like a whole family affair just to get this couch to the theater. So plan that in advance, and then find out from the theater, can you store the set pieces there between dress rehearsal and the performance? Or do you need the pickup for like 3 days so you can take it there and back and there and back? Keep in mind all of that stuff. I have so far not bought anything for a set piece or a prop. I have managed to borrow all of them, and I recommend it because you're spending enough money on these things between the people you're asking to perform with you and the advertising and stuff. Like, you're spending enough money. Don't spend money on props if you can help it. Okay, I'm just going to mention translations briefly. If you do a concert all in English, this is not an issue. But just in case, since we're mostly opera singers and operas are often in other languages, if you want to try to use super titles or something else that requires something from the theater, right? That's a technical thing. Do they have a projector? Do they have someone to run it? Get it in writing, or else you might find yourself the week of the show going, okay, here's the super titles. And they're like, what? We don't have anyone to run those. Right? Get everything in writing. Assume theater people are like, they're really busy and they might forget. If your audience is not classically inclined, if they're not an opera audience or a classical music audience, they might not be used to reading translations, especially like down in a program, but also maybe super titles. So take that into account, and they might not like it. Personally, I don't like people reading things while I'm singing because I'm a diva and I want them to look at me and my acting. So I just like avoid both issues altogether by delivering translation from the stage in some form or another. The very first concert I did, I used super titles. It was a nightmare. They put entire songs on one slide and just projected it behind me on the stage. And apparently they sometimes changed them and sometimes didn't. I don't know. It was a mess, and I just don't deal with it now. That's like the microphone thing. Like, nope, no super titles. I'm not going to do it. But there are a lot of ways to give the translation from the stage. You don't just have to stand there and give a plot rehash. You can give a summary of what's going on in the aria, or if you have an English version that tells the same story, you could do that first, like a monologue or a song in English. This last concert I did was music based on Shakespeare. So I had the best translation in the world. Shakespeare already wrote it for me. Once I knew I wanted to do an aria, I could just go to the Shakespeare play and find the part of the play that corresponded to that aria. And if it wasn't already a monologue, which most of them were, I could like piece one together. Like O Quante Volte doesn't correspond directly to a monologue in Romeo and Juliet, but you can make one work. I called it the Juliet Frankenstein monologue. And I had a friend who is an incredible actress, and I know we have similar philosophies, and we kind of look similar too, actually. So I just said, hey, will you deliver these monologues for me before I give the aria? So like, you do the monologue in English, then I'll sing the aria in Italian or French. And then people will know what's going on in the aria, but nobody has to, sit out there and say, in this aria, or read something. It was great. If you don't have Shakespeare, you might be able to find it somewhere else or write your own. You can also have someone else go out there and give a plot summary, so at least you get a break and they get to see someone else. Every once in a while, if it's not too long, the audience can just deal with it, right? You're an opera singer, you're a trained actor, you know how to tell a story, just go act it really well. It'll be fine. I would not do that for a 10-minute aria. That's a long time to not know exactly what's going on. But for a couple minutes every once in a while, they can handle it. I believe in you and your acting skills. Okay, that's what I have for the rehearsal, getting it together process. The whole time this is going on, you also need to be marketing because you have to sell tickets. So before it's official, be really careful. Don't make an announcement before you like have a signed contract. You're on the theater's or the concert venue's website. It's really embarrassing to be like, so you know how I said I was doing that concert? Never mind. At least I assume. I haven't had to do that, and I hope I never do. My personal story, I like doing little hints. I just made a Facebook status when I was working on this concert, said, I can't tell you why, but I now have a folder on my computer labeled Juliet Frankenstein. Got a really good response, and everyone was like, what are you talking about? And then I could joke about it for the next few weeks, be like, remember Juliet Frankenstein? You're going to find out why. Speaking of social media marketing is free. Behind the scenes updates have been really successful for me. I highly recommend that for if you're like trying to market yourself on social media, get your friends to come. Maybe you have some followers that are not currently friends. That's cool too. New fans in the making. Like videos from rehearsal, behind the scenes funny quotes, pictures of you guys like doing your big dramatic scene but in your street clothes. That's always fun. I personally don't like to do live videos of the music in case someone messes up and they don't want it on the internet. For myself, I can take that risk. I can do it when I'm practicing alone, but I don't want to make that decision for my colleagues. So I will film it and then get their approval later. Say, can I post this? Yeah, always get people's approval. Don't post things without permission. That's rude. Your Instagram story and Facebook story can be completely full of like, I'm eating oatmeal this morning, because it'll keep me energized through dress rehearsal. I'm working out to work off my nerves. Like all of a sudden your whole day becomes fascinating to people when you're getting ready for a concert. It's awesome. So keep that stuff really full to remind everyone all the time. I have a concert coming. I have a concert coming. I have a concert coming. You're coming to my concert, right? Because lots of well-meaning friends will be like, I'm totally coming. And then, oops, was that today? If your feed and your story are constantly full of my concert, that's on Saturday, I'm getting ready for my concert tomorrow, they won't forget. Okay, also ask your team to help with this, get their brands involved. For example, my friend Dylan was in my last concert, and he has his own brand on Instagram. Is like he's really passionate out gay actor. So we had a picture from the dress rehearsal of us kissing. And if I posted it, it was just like, oh, look, a pretty picture. But he posted it and it was hilarious. All this traction because he just made this big like markup caption thing over it. Said, I kissed a girl. It was okay, I guess. You send help. And it was really funny. And people responded way better than they would have if I'd just posted that. Because it was like, oh, look, another picture of Phoebe in an opera kissing someone. Get everyone's brands involved, coordinate. You're posting that photo. Okay, I won't post it at like exactly the same time. Get everyone involved. You have people, use them. Set up a MailChimp. If you haven't already, do it. It's free. It's great. Take some time to figure that out and send them emails like every other day, the 2 weeks before the concert. I am announcing that I got this really yummy goodies to sell at intermission. Right before, here's some production photos. Here's my set list being released. Here's the bio of the person playing piano with me, right? Just spread it out and send stuff. Just remind people. I asked my mentor about this. I was like, I don't want to overload them. And she said, more is more. I think she was right. It worked really well. Okay, here's the big one. Writing a press release. I'm going to tell you right now, thesaurus.com is your best friend. At least it's mine. So when you're writing a press release, the bio part especially is way more narrative than the kind of bio you might write for the program or your website. It's like a life story thing. Think about what brought you to this point in your career, what inspires you as an artist. Since I'm in my hometown, I could say, I'm at this point now because of all of you. right? Like I grew up in this town that values theater so much and I was exposed to all this Shakespeare. So now I'm paying tribute to that. And it worked really well. So like find your personal story. I've heard that it's a good idea. I haven't tried both ways, but I have heard and I believe it's a good idea to list a couple of specific pieces that you're doing that people might really love and want to hear live, or at least drop the names of a couple of the shows. Be like, I'm doing something from West Side Story. And everyone was, oh, I love West Side Story. I'll go see that, right? That kind of thing. And again, name drop your fellow performers. If they're making a name for themselves locally, then people will know them and say, oh, I love that person. I'll go see them, even if they don't know who you are. Or maybe they know both of you. Like, whoa, they know each other? It's cool. Okay, what is different? This is another good question to answer in a press release. What's different about this show or about you? And why should they care? Right? Why is this thing that you're doing interesting? And once you have some adjectives, you'll find yourself using the same ones over and over. So use thesaurus.com. I'm serious. It is your best friend. Have some photos on hand, because if the press release gets any bites and someone wants to interview you, they will want a photo. Here's the part that I struggled with forever. The hook. You need to have a really good first sentence or title, because newspapers get tons of press releases and you don't want them to throw it away. I did it last, partially because it's really hard, but also because once you've written the whole thing, you have a sense of what you want to communicate with your hook. You really need to use buzzwords like naked, right? Everyone goes, what? Naked? I used a variation of that in mine. I said Shakespeare exposed. I was in 2 newspapers that worked. So exposed, naked, sexy words. Madness and mayhem, I've also seen. I didn't use that one personally, but I've heard from friends that one was really successful. So yeah, find buzzwords that make people sit up and take notice in some form or another and use thesaurus. Just Google press release format for concert. It's really easy. That's what I did, and it totally worked. Okay, photos. You can save money if you already have a photo or a bunch of photos that you can use to make the poster for press releases. If you need new photos, do them months in advance. Hire a photographer for dress rehearsal. Like I said, send those out. It's great. And have them ready for when the press release comes out. Okay, final point on marketing, interviews. Once you've sent out a press release, you could get a phone call, especially if you've given them your personal phone number. So be ready and answer the phone professionally. And that also means you're probably going to talk to lots of spam people, because suddenly I was answering the phone even when I didn't know the number, because it might be a reporter. So I was suddenly talking to all the spam people that I usually ignore. Be ready for that. But it's not so bad. Be prepared with your talking points. I had worked so hard on the press release that I just had that on my computer screen in front of me. It was a phone interview. And I was just glancing at the press release and the concert description, because I'd already put all of my creative energy into it. So they had everything. Be yourself and genuine, but remember, sarcasm does not go over well just in print. People don't understand that it's sarcasm. Last very, very important point. While you're doing all of this negotiating and money and running rehearsals, staging things, you're a director, you're a producer, you're the star of the show, putting out your artistry and your heart and your voice all the time, you need to take care of yourself. Stress management and self-care are so important for the whole process, but especially the weeks leading up to the concert. I already mentioned this. I'm going to say it again. It is impossible to prepare for everything. You absolutely cannot take into account everything that is going to happen. So just accept it. Take things as they come. I tried. After the first concert, I was like, those things will not blindside me again. I will be prepared for them. Something else happened. Something new will happen every time, and they will be ridiculous. This is my favorite part. Here's some examples without naming any names. Nobody's really at fault for these. They were sort of like weird timing, miscommunication things. But these are the kinds of things that can happen right before a concert that you're not ready for. Phone call. Sorry, you can't have your dress rehearsal in the space on the night that you booked a month ago because we're hanging a curtain. Can you do it on another day? Like, yes, I have 2 days of notice and 5 performers with active careers. Let me just get us all there on a different day. It was a nightmare. We ended up doing rehearsal in a different space, and then we had tech in the space the day of, and oh God. So I answered an email different times about whether or not we were selling coffee at intermission. Day of, I get a call. I never got the final word on coffee. Are we doing that? Yes. Put on the patient's hat. Be calm. It's fine. You can't account for everything. I got a phone call on the Sunday morning before the concert, which was on a Thursday, because the owner of the theater had taken issue with something I wanted to put in the program that I had sent them 3 weeks ago. And I now had to completely redo the program the week of the concert. I had a performer call me the day of dress rehearsal and say, I forgot I have this other rehearsal right before, so I'm going to be half an hour late. She was in the first song. We couldn't start without her. Like, it's just going to happen. Just like breathe. Like, it's going to happen. It's okay. Your show will find a way to go on. I can't tell you what it will be, but I promise it will be something. It'll work out. So get your self-care, stress management routine on board before the week of the concert when the stress strikes. If it's meditation daily or exercise, whatever you do, make sure it's already there. If you get to the week of the concert and go, oh my gosh, I'm completely overwhelmed, I should start meditating, you're already too late. You need to be doing that the week before, so you're already in a good place. I personally need to exercise every day. That's mine. But I also like to way in advance so I can look forward to it, make an appointment to get my nails done the day of dress rehearsal. So then like they're still nice for the performance, but they're really nice for dress rehearsal, which is when we have the photographer in my face right up close. And it's like I can look forward to it and relax while I'm there. Just find your thing and have it ready to go. Except, once again, that you cannot account for everything. Something surprising is going to come up and you will be fine. And when that happens, don't be a diva complaining about it loud on social media with everywhere with your friends. It will come back to haunt you. And also it's completely unfair because you don't know what else is going on in the life of the person that's letting you down. Like, there might be some really good reason that they're currently really forgetful or something broke down. Like, you just don't know. So my rule is have a maximum of 3 people that you complain to, best friends, mom, maybe boyfriends or voice teacher or something. And like, they understand that you are venting and this isn't an indication of your total worldview. You just need to vent right now, and they're not going to spread it around the community. My friend and I have an agreement called Wait for the Car, which is, we learned this from Marie Platt, who's a Met soprano, and we had a masterclass with her. And she said, if you complain about a director after rehearsal, I promise they will be right around the corner and hear you, and they will be your judge at the next Met auditions. So her rule is wait for the car. And so my friend and I will just text each other, #wait for the car in the middle of rehearsal without anything. Like, we won't even say what the complaint is. Just, if I get a text from her that says #wait for the car, I know she's having a really frustrating rehearsal, and I'll just text back something supportive. So find your system like that, and don't be a diva in the bad way. Be a diva in the good way. You know, have an awesome performance where you rock and take center stage, but don't be a diva in the complainy, high maintenance way, because you want people to want to work with you. You want to work with you. Okay. And in the world of having other people help you, tell other people in your life that you're going to be overwhelmed and scattered right before your concert, because people are definitely willing to help when they know why. People are totally willing to help you out, but people are very resentful of doing extra work for what they perceive as no reason. So if you don't tell them, there's like, you know, why are you forgetting your share of the dishes? Or why aren't you paying attention to this thing? But if you tell them what's going on, say, can you help me? So far for me, the answer has always been yes. My coworkers were so sweet during my first concert. I used to have a muggle job in an office, and my first concert was coming up, and I turned into such a ditz the few days before it. I couldn't remember normal things, and my coworker thought it was adorable. And like, when I messed up on customer service, she would be like, oh, isn't she cute? She just can't remember things because she has a concert coming up. You should come to the concert. And it was great. This time my housemates were super sweet and did all my dishes for a week. it was nice. You know, let people be there for you, but don't just throw it at them. Surprise, suddenly I'm really forgetful and not helpful. Like, give them advance warning. They want to be there for you. Your friends want to support you, I promise. And you can thank them in the program if you want. I know I put in my last one, thank you to these people who ran lines with me. Okay, last little thing. After the concert, you need a few days off. Take them in advance. Tell your work or whatever. You will. If you have a really aria heavy concert, you might even like vocally need a few days of barely talking. Just know you've put out all this energy. It's like 3 times as much as you would normally put out to do a solo recital because you're also directing and producing. Take the time off. You will need it. This concert for you, making your mark, it actually is all about you. So that doesn't mean don't care about other people, but like take ownership of it and be proud of what you're creating. Like you can absolutely take other people's input, honor and value the other people involved, but own that confidence of like, no, I'm making this decision. And you can listen to suggestions, but this isn't the time for that, like, oh, maybe we should try that if you actually don't want to, because you don't have a lot of time and you don't have a lot of energy. So very kindly be assertive and grow your confidence all the time. I've really found that with this last concert, it's the thing that made the biggest difference for me. Coming through the first 2, I'm so much more confident, and it was wonderful to fully direct. I directed way more. Like I had other people doing scenes and I was like, this is my vision. This is my baby. I'm doing it. It felt so good. I highly encourage you to fight for that point. It might not happen the first time, but you're making your own magic here. You're making your opportunity. You're giving yourself permission to do your favorite music. Like, I really want to do this music. Nobody's doing this opera. I don't currently have a role that I'm working on. I'm going to do it. I don't have to wait for some outside person to cast me. I cast me right now. And if you fully embrace that, then it's much easier to talk to venues with that courage. Take ownership, take charge. Like I said, that's my title, right? Take charge of your career. It's totally worth it. It's going to be awesome.
How do you come up with how much you will pay the other musicians when you don't know how much money you will make at the end of the day?
I struggle every time. That's how. When you don't know how much, I talked to them a little because I was also casting my friends. So I could ask them, like, what are you comfortable with? I don't know how much I'm going to make. I gave a bonus structure. So I was like, I will definitely pay you X amount. But if we sell more than 200 tickets, I'll give you another $50 or another $100.
And that also gives them incentive to get the word out.
Yes.
To people.
Yeah, it helps with incentive. And it's also like, since I don't know, I just did a bunch of calculations of like, if I sell this many tickets, I'll have this much total. How much can I afford to pass out from that? If I sell this many tickets, I'll have this much. I just did lots of math and stared at it. I made an offer like, this is what I know I can afford. Is this acceptable to you? You
mentioned you might not split the money you make on concessions 50-50 next time. So why is that?
So it was sort of a balancing out of who's doing all the work. Like if I'm keeping all the money from sponsorships that I pursue, then they should also get to keep all the money from the stuff that they do. So it sort of seemed to me like, well, if I get to keep all of this, then you should get to keep all of that. And I would make more money from keeping all of the sponsorship and letting them take all of the concessions than from splitting everything 50-50.
Have you ever had to fire a musician?
I have not, thank goodness. I did have to make a decision between concerts once to not ask somebody who had been in all of my previous concerts to be in the next one. Luckily, the reasons were in the positive, not like you're not good enough, but I'm doing this music that suits this other performer better and he's in town and I really want to do this with him. It's not because you're not good enough. It's just different. This person has different skills and those are the skills I want. And the first person was totally understanding of that. And he was the first one to buy a ticket to the show.
Being like authentic and upfront and honest.
Yes, I think that's important. I think honesty works way better almost all the time in life, but especially if you're managing a bunch of people.
Do you have your own contract that you have the venue sign?
No, and I think I should. The venue I just did had a rental contract that we modified because I wasn't renting the space, we were splitting things. The one before that didn't have any contract, and they totally pulled weird things sometimes, like, oh, you can't have a dress rehearsal.
Are the contracts that you get from the venues, are they overwhelming? Are they pretty straightforward? Have you ever had a lawyer check them out or anything?
The last one, it was literally one page back and front. It was really simple. I have an unfair advantage because my Muggle job involved rental management at the venue. I worked at a venue where I managed rentals. I also have, my grandpa's a lawyer, so I have all kinds of unfair advantages, but I bet most of you guys do too. They're different from mine, but like we have more connections than we think we do. People help a lot if you ask. You just have to actually ask.
These are just basic things as, when we're pursuing a career in singing, we have to think about, okay, who is around us? What can they offer? And,
Absolutely.
And then also like, what can we offer them in return as well? And then, because we all have to just support each other and, use our resources.
Yeah.
Use our resources that are around us already.
Absolutely.
And we have, like you said, we have more than we think we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think being scared to ask might be the number one reason that people get turned down. Like, well, it's not getting turned down. You never asked.
Right. And what's the worst thing about getting turned down?
Like, you're already in that position. You don't have it now.
Yeah.
If you ask and they say no, you're exactly the same. You still don't have it. Right.
And there's nothing wrong with no. No is like, great. Now you know that you can't go for that source. You can go somewhere else. So you talked about reminding your musicians about rehearsals, etc. Do they ever get irritated by your reminders, or are they okay with it?
So far, I've worked with my friends, or like at least friendly acquaintances. So like I already had their number and I was just texting like, hey, see you at rehearsal tomorrow, the night before. And it's been great. But that works with everything since they're already my friends. Like we can just open, good faith, honest talk about money or staging or acting, whatever it is.